is that time for the great game with the one and only Matthew Ehret. Matthew Ehret is with us live in studio. Actually, he's somewhere in Canada, and I'm somewhere in the Midwest, and we're making this happen. We're making it work. Lots of things going on in the world, but first, I implore you to get over to CanadianPatriot.org and the RisingTideFoundation.net and make sure you go there, check out the websites, and make sure you register because they do often classes on Zoom. Him and his wife Cynthia, they do classes all the time. They're running all sorts of seminars. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of it. Get those seminars done, and also get the books. All right, Matthew Ehret has some wonderful books out. The Clash of the Two Americas, Volume 1 and 2, are vital reading for you to understand everything, where we are, and the struggle that has been, at least for the last almost 300 years at this point, between the closed versus open economic system. And this is what we're seeing even till this day. For you to understand it, make sure you get the book The Clash of the Two Americas, Volume 1 and Volume 2. The first book is The Unfinished Symphony. The second book is The Closed versus Open Economic Systems. Make sure you get it, because if you don't get it, you're not going to fully understand what the hell is going on today. Also, get a hold of his Substack. Subscribe to his Substack. The links will all be in the description box. Subscribe to the Substack. It is a great way for you to keep abreast of what is happening around the world and to get Matthew's breakdown of the geostrategic game that is being played out in front of all of us. It's very vital and very key that you guys do this. And with that being said, Monsieur Ehret, you are here.
Salut, mon ami.
Salut.
All right. Well, the Marquis Lafayette's coming to back you up for the revolution.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but no, actually, there's going to be a Volume 3. Cynthia and I are putting the finishing touches now on Volume 3 of Clash of the Two Americas. So next 3-4 weeks or so, expect that to hit the press as well on the upcoming Eurasian Manifest Destiny, which is going to really focus on the question of Hamiltonian American system economics as it is being revived for the first time since the death of John F. Kennedy in the other side of the Iron Curtain, with the developments around China's Belt and Road Initiative, around what is going on, especially now, since the events in Ukraine had really accelerated 1,000 times over with the denazification. There's, as all of your viewers, I'm sure, are aware, a massive fight by the nationalist movement within Russia around Putin to take back full control from the traitors and parasites that have embedded themselves within the Russian deep state, especially the Russian central bank, since the early 1990s. I mean, I think in some ways this thing was always there since the Bolshevik Revolution. There was always a fifth column, but it got really virulent with the 1990s severing, decapitation, and rape of Russia. And there was this one figure, Sergei Glaziev, who was the only cabinet minister to resign from the Boris Yeltsin government in the early 1990s over the oncoming privatization and destruction of Russia, which he spoke openly about in the early 90s. He was in his 30s at the time. So he resigned. He was the only man of principle to do so. And since then, he has been advising Putin. He is the Minister of Eurasian Integration currently, but he has been kept away from having a direct influence over Russia's central banking policy, which was set up in 1991 as a private IMF, Bank of International Settlements connected instrument of warfare against the Russian people. So he's been kept away from having influence until now. And that's why I wanted to start this off with a little video clip. I've never done a screen share.
Sure.
Is it to share audio?
Yeah. You can share the audio, right? Hit share screen, share audio.
Share system audio. Here we are. Okay, window. There we are. I think I'm getting it.
Chrome tab.
I think I'm getting it. Share. Okay. Can you guys see Vladimir Putin looking all serious?
Yes, go ahead and play it, buddy.
Good. All right. So this is Vladimir Putin just 2 days ago calling out this Russian fifth column. And we'll say a little bit more about this as we proceed, but this is a good little 2-minute blip, which is, I'm sure, keeping a lot of these traders up at night.
И живет даже не в географическом смысле этого слова. а по своим мыслям, по своему рабскому сознанию. Я совсем не осуждаю тех, у кого вилла в Майами или на французской ривьере. Кто не может обойтись без фуагра, устриц или так называемых гендерных свобод.
So-called gender freedoms.
Абсолютно не в этом. А повторю, в том, что многие из таких людей по своей сути ментально находятся именно там, а не здесь, не с нашим народом, не с Россией. Это и есть, по их мнению, признак принадлежности к высшей касте, к высшей расе. Подобные люди готовы и мать родную продать, только бы им разрешили сидеть в прихожей.
Wow.
И они хотят быть похожими на нее, всячески подражая ей. Но они забывают или не понимают вообще, что этой так называемой высшей касте они, если и нужны, то как расходный материал, чтобы использовать их для нанесения максимального ущерба нашему народу. Коллективный Запад пытается расколоть наше общество, спекулируя на боевых потерях, на социально-экономических последствиях санкций, спровоцировать гражданское противостояние в России и, используя свою пятую колонну, стремиться к достижению своей цели. А цель одна, я уже говорил об этом – разрушение России. Но любой народ, а тем более российский народ, всегда сможет отличить истинных патриотов от предателей и просто выплюнет их, как случайно залетевшую в рот мушку, выплюнет на панель. Убежден, такое естественное и необходимое самоочищение общества только укрепит нашу страну, нашу солидарность, сплоченность и готовность ответить на любые вызовы.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. If that's not an absolute, like, calling them out, man. Incredible. An absolute rebuke.
Yeah. The it's true. I mean, these are really house slaves. I can't use the full word, but everyone knows what I'm talking about. This is really the Russian variant of it, where there were so many of these ass lickers who were just empowered and strengthened to become little wannabe ass lickers for the city of London and Wall Street financiers in the 90s, when they were given opportunities to just buy up for pennies on the dollar formerly nationalized Russian assets. And a lot of them were taken back, but these guys became billionaires overnight, and people think of them as like Russian oligarchs, stooges for Putin. That's how our media portrays it. And it's like, no, these guys have always been loyal to the financier oligarchy, really just trying to, like he said, would sell their grandmothers to just sit in their hallway of one of these elites, one of these from the higher caste.
Right.
Like local Brahmins from India, how they were able to, like the British were able to corrupt an entire network, a whole caste system that would then self-control just so that they would be allowed to maybe sit in the waiting room and have tea with a British lord at some point.
Absolutely. That's where we got the whole Anglo-Indian angle from.
Exactly.
We're Anglo-Indians. What
Every country has this type of encouragement, right? And that's the thing too with the American oligarchy as well. Like there's a documentary I was just watching going through the history of the JP Morgan crowd and all the way from the 19th century, and how they all have their, like, JP Morgan has had a castle in London, and these upper crust Yale wannabe Oxford Cambridge ideologues who are like put through the processing machine to become upper level managers. They all like mimic British accents. They really want to just be invited to parties with nobles and royalty and inner blood, but they know that they're never going to be allowed to contaminate those upper level blood lines, which themselves are, completely inbred anyway.
Correct.
But you've got a whole sniffling system that Putin just completely called out in a really fantastic format. And it's not just words, it's real actions. So we're seeing now behind this, I mentioned Glaziev, right? Glaziev has come out now where he is managing a project to create a new alternative financial architecture with a new financial currency. Pepe Escobar wrote about this. It's been on the Russian media. It's completely being blacked out in the West, and it's being done with the Eurasian Economic Union as a whole with China.
Yep.
So these two countries together have set up this new project, and it's moving fast. Now Lyubina, the head of the Elvira Nabiulina, the head of the Russian central bank, who has always been a traitor.
Yep.
She was like a Yale...
the Rothschild plant, man.
A Rothschild plant. Yeah, she
Yep.
studied at Yale. This girl has been, I mean, whatever she is, has been keeping Russia's ruble tied to the floating exchange rates, fighting against capital controls, keeping it tied to speculative assets, and also keeping the Russian gold as much as possible in foreign banks instead of being contained within Russia itself, making things like what's happened now with the $300 billion confiscation of Russian banking assets possible. And Glaziev just a couple of weeks ago called her out with the whole network that she represents with Sparebank that's tied to the World Economic Forum, the whole depopulation crowd. He called them all out essentially as traitors. So you have a complete restructuring going on, nationalization of different treacherous media operations that were created to promote liberalism and just, that's like Xi Jinping pointed out a few months ago when he clamped down on this effeminization of men, the worshiping of celebrityism, the addiction to violent video games and other things targeting the young. This has been a whole cultural modern opium war of the spirit that has the designed effect of turning target societies, especially their young, mushy and incapable of maturing, to become adults and thus leaders of the next generation. That's what this whole thing has been about, which is why China clamped down on a lot of this stuff. And that's what now is going on with Russia taking back controls of a lot of the mechanisms that influence culture. So it's very important that people pay attention to a lot of this stuff. Very important. Yeah. So, I mean, I just want to start with that. There's a lot of other things we can...
That's a key, that's a cannon shot out of the gate because, the Russian central bank, and a lot of people don't realize is when they kept the ruble pegged to a floating rate, they've made it vulnerable for currency attack. They made it vulnerable for those who are playing in the Forex market, which we know that the U.S. uses as an absolute weapon to punish countries that allow their currencies to free float within the Forex markets. And this is what we're seeing happening. So getting rid of her, and already I think this morning when I looked, the ruble is starting to rise. This is a good thing.
It's a very good thing. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the fact that, I mean, the ruble, what people are seeing as well is that Russia is not hurting nearly as much as they thought it was going to by all of these sanctions, kicking so many of its banks out of SWIFT. What you're seeing are completely other markets that we already knew were there. I mean, you and I knew you, I mean, this is something you've been talking about for a long time. The Chinese have one of the most robust growth models in world history.
Correct.
And they are more than happy to work with Russia and fill the void of the lost business in terms of selling gas, petrol, coal, other rare earths, whatever else. I mean, palladium, everything that Russia needs to sell to maintain its economy. China is more than willing to help out, buy, and also invest in turn with building new pipelines, new infrastructure, and other things that Putin and Glaziev and Lavrov and Shoigu and others have been pushing for a long time. And the only thing that's been holding back things like the Great Northern Vision, the Polar Silk Road, the Arctic branch of the Belt and Road Initiative, the only thing which has been like putting sand in the gears has been this foreign agency manipulating the central bank of Russia. China doesn't have that problem because China never allowed their central banks to be privatized.
Yeah.
So they have 4 major state banks and many other smaller banks and corporations that are all affiliated with the national interest that are able to emit bonds, to emit investments tied to projects that make things happen really quickly. And they're willing. They've made a point to all countries willing to work with them on the BRI, including the USA, who just on March 4th, China made yet another offer to the USA to just say, hey, look, you got your Clean Green Initiative, your Build Back Better for the World. You're trying to put this in opposition to the BRI. Don't do that. Look, let's just make this work. Just work with our rules of the game. We'll synthesize both of these things. It'll be in everybody's best interest. And of course, the technocratic Malthusian elite pretended those words were not said. But they're willing to export this growth model, this method of doing banking, to every other country that wants to survive. And Russia is number 1 right now on the list. And it's so persuasive, it's so effective at getting the job done, at building things that improve the lives of the people, but also make really good business paybacks. So people even within the upper crust business class get massive incentive by investing in the sorts of BRI connected projects, such that we even have a basket case corrupt place like Saudi Arabia.
Correct.
Not even picking up the phone when Biden is calling them, begging to get extra oil imports, because, you know, what are they going to do with this shutdown of Russian oil and the utilization of all of their oil reserves that Trump had filled over the course of a few years? That's all being drained down and depleted. They got no backup. So Saudi Arabia is not even picking up the phone, and instead has announced that they're going to allow the settlement of oil deals from this point forward in Chinese yuan instead of the US dollar, which breaks the entire post-1973 US dollar, US petrodollar, which has been the foundation of international currency. The thing that has stopped the US economy in large measure from melting down has been that everybody has to conduct international oil trades with OPEC countries in US dollars. That's over. That's ending. And I mean, the implications of this have still yet to be realized by a lot of idiot economists in the West. But I mean, this whole thing was a fraud. It shouldn't even existed. Like, when you go back to 1973, William Engdahl, who's a researcher, has written a lot on this, has made the point really well that this was a Henry Kissinger operation. And I want you to play that video soon.
Yeah, I have lined up for you.
Thank you. But this was something which Henry Kissinger initiated after the US dollar was removed from the gold reserve fixed exchange rate system in the USA, which then tied it to the floating markets, the same way that Russia has been kept crippled and has been unable to emit the type of large-scale credit with capital controls the way China has been able to for building things. That's what the US used to be able to do, that before the dollar was put onto floating exchange rates, which destroyed the stability that we had from 1945 with the creation of the Bretton Woods system, the GATT, the world, you know, everything that Roosevelt had set into play, which was designed to destroy the ability of empire to speculate on small currencies, especially the US, but everyone, by fixing exchange rates so that you had a relative security knowing what the relative values of currencies were going to be in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. So you could build, if you want to build things that get a lot of real durable wealth, that means thinking about mega projects the way John F. Kennedy was doing with the space program, with the building of dozens of major hydroelectric dams, both in the USA, but also in Africa and Ghana and South America. So that's the way to do it. But to build those things, you can't have a wildly unstable, fluctuating market where you don't know what the value next quarter is going to be of your currencies, because the speculator could go and just commit economic terrorism. So that stability was destroyed in 1971, and it was made even worse with this tying the US dollar's value to the value of oil produced by OPEC countries in 1973. Which then, I mean, you know, on the spot markets, everyone knows this now. On the futures markets, you could easily just manipulate the prices, where everyone is doing trading, manipulating the prices of oil, which can go up to, you know, $80, $90, $100. But the actual cost of making a barrel of oil is maybe $3, $4 max. Right. So
isn't that crazy, man?
It's nuts. It's totally nuts. It has no bearing on physical reality whatsoever.
Correct.
Yeah.
Go ahead, man. Oh, want me to play the video?
Yeah. No, not yet.
Okay, not yet. Okay.
It's just so funny. It's so funny, but here we have to tie it in, make it organic though. So what type of psychological basket case would think that this is a good idea? That's it. Only a Biden could think this is a good idea.
Well, we have a message from the president.
I heard that you do. Okay, what did the president have to say?
It's a special message from the president himself. Let me just refresh this.
My fellow geraniums, the Prime Minister of Canada, Jussie Trombone, has been killed by trucks. He'll be sorely missed. Not only was he the first black guy Pez minister, he was a great American. And also a great Muslim guy. Our farts and prayers go out to the... Not our farts. Look, there's these trucks. They transform. First, I sent Vice Principus Canola Hairlip to the planet of the truck people to open a dialogue with Optimus Prime. Second, I've asked Congress to increase my dosage of talkie pills. And finally, I've approved emergency funding to distribute free crack pipes to every man, woman, and transgender. Help us stay alert for when the truck people. They got maple syrup for blood, man.
I shoot my shot alone in my house.
Kyle Dunnigan does awesome work.
Oh my god, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Oh my god!
And it's not that far off. That's really what's going on in his subconscious.
Canola Harris, Press Minister, Jesse Trombone. Oh, he's a good Muslim. Our thoughts and prayers.
These trucks transform. We're gonna have a meeting with Optimus Prime. Yeah, no, it was great. That was really good. Man, I need more of that. But see, that's the thing, right? Like, you have such an inability to just see the absurd, to self-reflect. If you're in the mindset of one of these synthetic personalities who are installed, there's a complete inability to do this very basic human thing, which is self-reflect upon your own folly. They cannot do that. And, this actually reminds me, I was thinking about, obviously, Justin Trudeau calling anybody who has doubts about the medical narratives that have been pushed over the last 2 years as being misogynistic and racist. And yet this is a guy who openly, it came out into the open, was running around in parties as blackface, meeting with actual Nazis like Andrei Parubi, who is a major force behind the Azov Battalion and Svoboda Party, came and did photo ops with Justin Trudeau, an open Nazi, like people who, these people carry around swastikas today. And they're doing photo ops together in 2016, 17, 18, doing arms deals, celebrating these characters as if they're heroes. And they have no ability to self-reflect on their own. They still, despite that, will still call Putin a Nazi. And that this is a replay of World War II, what's going on in Ukraine, despite the fact that the actual Nazis that are there today, it's true there are Nazis, but they're the ones who are fighting in Mariupol using human shields. There's videos of these Azov groups taking naps in daycares. You see this, right, floating around, where they're actually they're taking naps in daycares because they feel safe there, partially because they probably have infantile egos that never grew up, and partly because they know that the West will treat any assault on a daycare, even though there's no kids in it, as being an immediate attack by the Russians on children. So they're cool bunking down in these places. But the one thing that I really wanted to show, I got an image here, which is wildly interesting. Here, I'm just gonna open it up from Ukraine. This is a Ukrainian government. Here it is. Ad promoting a no-fly zone called the Close the Sky movement. So they want really badly for NATO to conduct a no-fly zone over Ukraine, despite the fact that that's an immediate recipe for World War III. And their ad that these groupings have produced, these brilliant geniuses, is the following. And so they have the outlines, these maps of 6 different Ukrainian cities. And inside of each of the maps, you have photographic evidence of cities from World War II, a couple of cities from World War II that were bombed, of which Berlin, Dresden are there on the left. Now, what makes this completely absurd is that they're saying, what's the messaging here? If you don't do a no-fly zone, this is going to end up, these cities are going to look like Dresden, Berlin in World War II.
Yeah.
Now, there's layers of irony that the makers of this poster are incapable of identifying. Number one is that these are Nazi cities. So you're basically saying, we're just like these Nazi cities that got bombed in World War II, even though we're not Nazis, of course. That's the Russians, which
Wouldn't
itself
be too
is
far
funny.
from the truth, right?
Then number two is that in the case of at least Dresden, this city was bombed unnecessarily by the British. That bombed this city, killing tens of thousands of civilians unnecessarily at the end of World War II. There was no point to bombing Dresden and destroying this cultural center of the world. So again, you're basically saying, help us, Britain, Anglo-American financier oligarchy, from doing what you did to us, or what you did to Germany in World War II. And again, they're directly comparing themselves to Nazi Germany. So
Sick.
again, no ability to self-reflect or self-criticize, and because there's no awareness of real history at all in any of these characters. So it's
Sick.
quite something.
No, it's remarkable, and it's funny because it's the Nazis that are controlling Ukraine, telling Westerners protect us, otherwise we're going to wind up like Nazi Germany.
It's so
And
over the top.
you saw
It's just
the video of Zelensky addressing Congress and Congress standing up, giving him a standing ovation like he's some sort of great hero. I mean,
Yeah.
Western politicians, not only are they the octogenarian ruling elites, these people are morons. They are victims of their own fantasy, man. And there's
I
nothing
know.
more dangerous than believing your own lie, believing your own bullshit, believing your own fantasy. There's nothing worse.
I know, and you got so
Incredible.
many generals being brought out as talking heads in the media on CNN, even Fox News across the board, being brought out saying that we can win a nuclear war with Russia. I've seen already like
It's
4 or 5 of these
insane.
generals actually promoting this idea that yes, we should absolutely send U.S. troops. We should set up a no-fly zone. We should supply more weapons, and including NATO weapons, to Ukraine, regardless of the fact that we acknowledge that they cannot actually win against the Russian army, which is far superior. But we should do this. And if it does come to an all-out fight between Russia and NATO, and it goes nuclear, that's fine too. We can win that as well. And these guys have no bearing in reality. I doubt that any of them have actually seen combat in any direct way. Maybe in a war room far removed from a battlefield of Iraq, maybe. But even that, I highly doubt.
And they've never won a war. Who
and
are
they
these
haven't.
expert generals? And the American strategy on land warfare is probably one of the worst in the world. I mean, the American military will get rolled over and mauled to death. It will be the equivalent of sending a Chihuahua in to fight against an angry pit bull. It's not going to
Mhm.
work. You know, the Americans take time. They like to build up forces, and then they bomb with aerial superiority, and then they try to do a what's called a kill box. Well, the last 20, 30 years, Russians have been figuring out how to easily, Chinese as well, how to easily take a kill box that the Americans create and transform the kill box into a coffin and then bury the Americans in it. But these generals don't do that because our mentality in this country is called run to failure. That's what I've been calling for years. Run to failure. If the oceans of the world were to dry up tomorrow, we would still be building submarines. That's just the way it is because that's just the way we do things. This is America. They're not going to change tactics.
Yeah, no, it's there's this movie by Mike Judge from 2006 called Idiocracy. You ever see that one?
Oh God, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's cynical, but it's hilarious, and it's a logical extension of what it's like a parody, but it's a logical parody of the continuation of this sort of logic. And I mean, these are people 500 years or whatever it is in the future, where society has gotten extremely dumbed down. This is presuming that society can linearly extend indefinitely on this rate of stupidification for 500 years, which it cannot. But whatever, that's the point of fiction, right? So this guy is in like a cryogenic chamber by accident. He wakes up 500 years in the future, and he's a dumb guy in our present age, kind of mediocre. But in that future age, he's seen as a genius because he could tie his shoelaces, and people just see him like he quickly becomes the advisor to the president. Who's like this World Wrestling Federation, dude, which again is not that far off from where we're at today, right? Where you have like Zelensky, a second-rate comedian, who's installed as president, and Governor Schwarzenegger was just the governor of the biggest, one of the biggest economic engines of the U.S. for quite a few years. So we're not that far off. We got Biden in there, frankly. I mean, right there, it's not that far off from an idiot Worldwide Wrestling Federation wrestler. And he's like, he's assigned to try to figure out the problem of the food crisis going on in the world in the future. And basically, I'll just spoil it. I don't care. He finally comes to the realization everyone loves Gatorade. You can't get water in this future society. Every sink has Gatorade coming out of it. The best reason why, when he's trying to get why is Gatorade coming out of the faucets everywhere, the reasoning he could get is because there's electrolytes. And somewhere along the way, 200-300 years earlier, the Gatorade company had taken over control of much of global agriculture and governments, and replaced water with its product. And finally, he realizes, wait a minute, we're spraying Gatorade on all of the world's farmland. Why don't we just use water instead? And with this big controversial idea, but it ultimately saves the day. But we've been doing this. Our grandfathers did this. Our great grandfathers did this. We've always done it this way. Why would we do it any other way? It works, doesn't it? Kind of sprouts a few beans. It's really that. Like you said, if the world's oceans dried up, we'd still be making submarines. It's completely absurd.
Yeah, and it's such a fact. We'll still be making submarines, and we'll form a bucket brigade, and to have people throw water on it.
Yeah,
that's just the way it works. From a fire hydrant around the block to the docks where the submarine is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was thinking a little bit too about just the inability to have any consistent connection mentally to reality, because everything is about perception, which changes like the winds. All of a sudden, what's true one year is no longer true the next year. In the current climate of this oligarchical system, where everyone is just supposed to think truth is what they feel. Your feelings are your access to truth. And I was watching another clip of Biden today, saying, when he's asked, would you call Putin a war criminal? He's like, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Putin's a war criminal. And then you flash back 20 years into the past, right after the bombing of Iraq began.
Yep.
And you have Biden in Congress or Senate, whatever, saying, I was the one who was the loudest supporter of the bombing of Belgrade. In 1999. Yep. I called for the bombing of bridges, of infrastructure. I did that. I'm
slaughtered the Christian Balkans, bro. Slaughtered it.
Yeah. Like, he's basically admitting to being a war criminal directly. Thousands of innocent civilians were killed in that NATO war that was done illegally outside of the UN Security Council in 1999 against Yugoslavia.
Yep.
Complete fallacious reasoning behind it. Russia and China both vetoed it.
Hold on, Matthew. You said there was a fallacious. It wasn't a fallacious thing. It was a fellatio thing. That's what the reason was, Matthew. I'm not going to go into about Monica and the blue dress, but it was a fellatio thing, not a fallacious thing.
But see, it's all semantics, eh? Like, these guys will just take a little word and they'll just like nitpick on a word and then have you forget what the whole argument was about.
Classic NLP, man.
Completely, just reframing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. You thought you were telling a lie, but what is lie? It could be lying down.
It all depends on what the
opposite of standing up. So how could you not be standing up and and all of a sudden you think you're talking about like gravity or something, and you just have just acquiesced to bombing a country.
What works for me is I always say this. I said it all depends on what the definition of is.
Yeah. Or like Rumsfeld saying, "Oh yeah, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq." Well, there's unknowns and there's known unknowns, and then the unknown unknowns, and then the known unknown unknowns, and you get into so many like negations that he just turns his opponent's brains to jelly, and they forget why they're there. And then again, we've just bombed Iraq.
Unbelievable.
Wild.
Unbelievable.
Just wild. Yeah, there's so many points. I mean, it's a really tough period, right, in some ways, to keep track of the global developments, because it is so fast paced across the board. And there's just so much absurdity. But I think it's just really important to just take a step back and realize that, no, look, we're at the end of a system, right? And we have this purge going on in Eurasia. A new global economic security system is being brought online. China is currently, George Soros has called for a regime change, a coup d'etat, to oust Xi Jinping. These people in his speech at the Hoover Institute, people who think in those terms, are trying to maintain the idea that the Chinese elite, and there are bad guys in the elite, of course, there are bad guys, and that's what Xi Jinping has been going to war with since 2012, the same way Putin has been going to war with this thing since 1999. But he's making the point that they hate Xi Jinping, they're ready to overthrow him, and they're creating these fantasies and fictions and narratives for their followers, where they're trying to maintain these lies. Like China's whole economy, Soros said this, is their whole economy is tied to their real estate speculative Evergrande bubble, which, of course, it's a bubble. It was mismanaged. It was bad. It's really big. It's true. Those are bad things. But that is not the cause or engine of China's growth. That's incompetent. They're just looking at monetary flows. They're not looking at the fact that China has the ability to build anything you want. They produce something like 40 times more concrete than the U.S. does.
Massive.
I mean, steel, industrial steel is being processed at the greatest rates in history. They have international networks and cooperative treaties with other countries that are all based on physical economic development. And people are being pulled out of poverty at faster rates. They still have not healed from the trauma of the one-child policy, which was brought to them not by China, that was brought to them by people like Henry Kissinger and the Club of Rome, which had set up the World Economic Forum in 1971. This is the thing that was brought into China in the late 70s as one of the terms to allow China to access factories and manufacturing that China needed if they were going to deal with their poverty issue. And that was done on the condition that they adopt these computer models as their regulators for their population. And so they acquiesced. That was a mistake. It resulted in a travesty. But the Chinese leadership and the nationalists know that, and they've been working really hard to heal from those wounds. So they're still a negative population. They can't replenish their population yet. It's getting better year to year, but they're still under the reproduction rates needed to have a growing population, which is 2.1 children, whatever that means per couple. So they're, I think, at 1.5 or something like that. It's still quite low. But they've alleviated the two-child. It went up to 2 children in 2015. It went up to 3 children last year. It's going up probably with no limit very shortly. We don't know in the next 5-10 years, maybe sooner. Who knows? Things are moving fast. Russia as well. In the 1990s, they went into negative population growth. They lost 300,000. No, more than that, in the millions. No, it was many more millions of people lost in the 1990s. They're recovering, but it's still slow going. So now with the complete break from this Malthusian monetarist behemoth controlled by the Anglo-American oligarchs, we don't know how fast the rate of growth can be. It probably is going to be a lot faster than people realize if we can avoid the oncoming danger of an actual war. But there's a huge fight. And I mean, it is good that the World Economic Forum has cut off Russia, right? So they thought that they had a handle on being able to reabsorb Russia. They've currently given up on that fantasy. The Spare Bank, which is tied to Nabulina, from the central bank, that she worked directly for the Spare Bank before that. The head of the Spare Bank, Hermann Greff, is a World Economic Forum acolyte. He's been the one bringing in with Tatiana Golikova, the deputy prime minister, who was formerly the health minister. She's been the one overseeing Russia's COVID health protocols, bringing in also all of the entire big pharma complex, which is tied to the Gates AstraZeneca network that's been brought into Russia. That's been this whole deep state network. And up until now, they've been getting a lot of what they wanted, and now that's all being cut off. So World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab just declared Putin enemy number 1, erased all traces of Putin. His speeches from past Davos summits, that's been cut off. You have Jack Ma, many of these World Economic Forum trustees, and again, Jack Ma, the Bill Gates of China, he's another one of these World Economic Forum trustees, like Chrystia Freeland. He's been taken down completely, stripped of all of his influence politically and even economically in many ways. Alibaba, the thing that he was running, has been taken down. So is the Ant Group that he also runs. The thing has been largely, it's still operational, it's still a very useful thing, but he doesn't run it. He's been put in his mansion with his swimming pool. He's been told, spend a few of your millions, have your cocktails, but you're not having any of that influence, especially since he called for the economic overthrow of the Chinese banking system last year.
The guy's flirting with disaster.
Yes.
And it also amazes me that they haven't taken him out and put an end to the guy, which was most people would expect.
Yeah,
but what they're doing
there's a lot
is
of self-restraint. There's a lot of, I think
tremendous amount of self-restraint.
Yeah. I mean, they've taken down. He had a bunch of monuments to himself, statues in various office buildings. That
I heard they were like giant heads. Like
giant heads, massive head. He actually gets off on the fact that he has such a big head, and even wants it accentuated in the artistic portraitures of him.
Such an idiot, living bobblehead doll. This guy,
even though like 80% of it is skull, he doesn't care.
It's mostly bone. You ever saw the interview between him and Elon Musk? Musk literally looked at him like, "Are you an idiot? Are you stupid?" It was hilarious, man.
That's funny.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. I don't have high regard for Elon Musk, but at the same time, if a guy if an autistic guy who's like, or Asperger's, sorry, if a guy like Elon Musk, who is, I think, pretty stupid, thinks that you're stupid, you're really stupid. Yeah, no, this whole thing is being taken down, and this whole apparatus, this whole deep state fifth column penetration is being removed in China, and that's really, really important. So the fact that you now have, again, Saudi Arabia even getting on board, you have Iran, you have Russia. They haven't still an open door policy, despite the fact that we've spit in their face again and again. They still have an open door to invite those who wish to survive from the West to be a part of this different economic process for the future. So, we don't have that much time to choose and decide and dilly-dally. I know that, the banking collapse is something which is, they came close to pulling the plug when they were freezing all of the bank accounts in Canada, and they nearly had a complete chain reaction bank run. The time wasn't ripe, so they pulled back on that. They freaked out. They decided to, alleviate some of the provincial mandates and release the frozen bank accounts and the people who were arrested. But that trigger point is still something in their calculus. So it's something to keep in mind. And if we are going to have a future, we got to work with them. I'm just so sorry. I just got a call. I have to do a very big conference call in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Sorry. Yeah,
that's fine. Matt, thank you, bro, for coming on board. I know it's this week's been crazy. We're supposed to be here on Tuesday and we couldn't do it, but it's been crazy. So, dude, definitely next week let's connect back on. Thank you again for showing up, folks. Matt's website, go check it out, CanadianPatriot.org, RisingTideFoundation.net. And with that being said, we're over and out.